How's it going, everybody? My name is Ged. This is Fabulous Flix, and welcome to another edition of A Walk Around Guelph. For the most part, as you know, I like to interview people that I know because it's comfortable. I know their boundaries. I know what buttons I can push. But in this case, I have something a little bit different. Today, my guest is our MPP, Mike Schreiner. Mike, welcome to the program.
Okay, it's a pleasure to be on, and it's a beautiful sunny day here in Guelph.
It is. It's a little bit chillier than it has been for the last couple of days,
That's
which
true.
isn't necessarily a bad thing. I golfed last weekend and slightly mismanaged the amount of heat, so I ended up in bed for a little while Sunday morning. Were you out and about?
Yeah, on Sunday I paddled the Aramosa River from Eden Mills to the boathouse with my daughter, and it was a fantastic day. And it was part paddling, part hiking because we haven't had much rain, so the water levels were low. And I thought I had put sunscreen all over myself, but somehow I didn't get enough on my thighs, and so between my knees and ankles, I got sunburned pretty bad. So I can relate to the being out in the sun a little too much.
Now if you want to get ice cream, like the roads are open. You don't need to put forth physical activity. You can just drive down and park. Like,
Yeah, it doesn't require 4 hours going down the river, eh?
is
Well, we
that is
got
that
to the
something you
cool.
guys do a lot?
We paddle a lot. Yeah, actually, on Monday we paddled around out in Guelph Lake, and we do a big canoe trip somewhere in northern Ontario every summer together. And so it's something my daughter loves to do, and I love doing it with her. And we'd hoped to get ice cream at the end of the day, but the line at the boathouse was so long that my daughter was like, "Forget this, Dad. I'm too tired. Let's go home."
So then do you have to paddle back, or is like someone there to pick you up?
Yeah, so our house, we live close to the river, so our house is not too far from the boathouse. So when we got there, I phoned my wife. She had dropped us off in Eden Mills, and I phoned her up, and it took her 5-10 minutes, and she was there to pick us up.
Nice, perfect. So, I mean, I must admit, and please don't take this in the wrong way. I actually have no idea what an MPP does. I know that makes me sound like a terrible human being, but it's something that I've kind of steered clear of for the majority of my life. So just for people like myself who understand that you obviously do a lot for a community and you take in a lot of emails from dummies like me who want to be able to play golf. Thanks for the reply, by the way. Can you just kind of high level in a couple minutes? What is it that kind of you do as an MPP on a weekly basis or monthly basis?
Yeah, so there's multiple components to the job, and I think it's a good question to ask because I think there's a lot of people out there who are probably have the exact same question but don't want to ask. There are two main components to the job, though multiple parts of the job. So one is just representing Guelph and doing what I would call what most of us refer to as constituency work, and so that's replying to your email when you ask a question. It is helping people navigate the bureaucracy on everything from, I'm trying to get a health card to, I need access to social housing. How do I get access to legal aid? Or, I need help getting benefits for something. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Questions that I can then go to like the Ledge Library or somebody in the ministry and get answers to people's questions. And sometimes it's individuals like yourself asking me a question, or sometimes it's the Chamber of Commerce and the head of the chamber coming and saying, asking a question. Sometimes it's the mayor. Sometimes it's our MP. It Sometimes it might be a business owner, and so really doing that work in the constituency. And in the pre-COVID times, I would spend every Friday doing meetings all day long with constituents, and then Saturday and Sunday doing lots of events around Guelph. Obviously, it's not the same because of COVID, so a lot of that is shifted online and doing it via Zoom, unfortunately, because I miss that interpersonal connection. And then Monday to Thursday, I do the other part of my job, which is representing Guelph in the legislature. And there are various components to that part of my work. debating bills, doing committee work. So, reviewing bills. I have a committee that's meeting tomorrow. We can meet via Zoom by committee now. So I'll be able to be in my office in Guelph and then zooming into the legislature. And I'll be presenting a whole number of amendments to a bill that's being reviewed at committee right now. And then another component of the job that maybe is actually the most visible part of the job is that I do a lot of media. So I scrum with media every day at Queen's Park in what's known as the media studio. I do a lot of radio interviews, TV interviews, interviews with journalists for web or print-based media. And then I do a lot of interviews like what we're doing today. There's a lot of people doing citizen journalism now, which I think is fantastic. And then another component that's related to my constituency work is I'm asked to go in and meet with a lot of like school groups. So I'll speak in civics classes a lot. I'm asked to speak at a lot of events. So even there was more so prior to COVID, less so during COVID, but there's still a number of organizations and events happening in Guelph that have moved online where the MPP is asked to bring greetings or speak. And to be honest with you, I love every part of the job. All of it has different types of rewards to it. But at the end of the day, I feel like I can make a difference for our community and I can be a strong voice for our community. And I really enjoy that.
Fair enough. Well, first things first, I mean, the lighting over there is amazing. So you must do this on a regular basis. Like I'm impressed with this whole setup you got going on. You got the picture in the background, your lighting's balanced. Like, I'll be honest, I'm slightly envious and I'm a massive nerd. So kudos to you. And I guess
I'm just at my dining room table here.
It's almost like the fourth date, like, oh, this old thing. Like, I just threw it on. You got like 7 lights around you and microphones. So I guess the best way to sum it up is you really act as a liaison. So a liaison between the people of Guelph and then the province. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And so,
Okay.
when we debate legislation at Queen's Park, I'm trying as best I can to be Guelph's voice in what
Okay.
people in Guelph think about that legislation. And it can
So
be a liaison between groups in Guelph. So, like we have a lot of projects around ending homelessness in Guelph and trying
big
to
topic.
bring
Yep.
people together to make
Yep.
that happen.
Okay. So how long have you been? Because obviously, I mean, I saw that you got in via vote, kind of the last election runner. How long have you been into politics? And the follow-up question is, what did you do before that?
Yeah, so I've been interested in politics my whole life, and a
Okay.
story I like to tell, especially to when I would speak in high school civics classes, is that I grew up on a farm, and my dad would put me on a tractor at like 7 in the morning and come back and pick me up at 7 at night, and I'd drive around in a circle all day, tilling, and I was bored. And I had the cheap tractor, no radio or anything. And so to entertain myself, I would pretend like I was giving political speeches. Like I'm that much of a nerd when
All
it comes
right.
to
Okay.
politics. But I will have to say that in my early 20s, I became a bit disillusioned with electoral politics and decided that there are many ways you can do politics in life. And I decided to do it by starting a food business to change the food system.
Okay.
And so it started on a farm just north of Guelph in 1995. And actually, we just sold the business last year. So it was in business for oh my gosh, 25 years.
Oh my
And
goodness.
and then I also ran a food, and it was a food delivery company
Okay.
supporting local organic farmers.
Okay.
And then I also started a food production company around 2000 at the kitchen at Ignatius. So if you know where the Ignatius Jesuit Center is, just on the outskirts of Guelph, right by the
Yep.
curling club.
Yep.
And my business partner and I ran that business for a few years, and then I helped start a nonprofit organization called Local Food Plus, which was all about trying to get more local Ontario grown food into public institutions, restaurants, retail stores, and just all about marketing and promoting Ontario food and farmers. And so, in a sense, I would argue that those activities, even though they weren't even close to electoral politics, were related to politics because I was trying to move an agenda of building a sustainable local food system. And I carried that work into formal electoral politics and chose the Green Party because it was just a party that seemed to represent my values and really prioritizes the issues I care the most about. And the three top ones for me are climate action and addressing environmental issues, addressing issues around social justice and income inequality, and improving our democracy.
Fair. So you did the food, you were in the food business for a fair amount, a number of years. At what point, at what stage, maybe at what year did that stop for you to kind of fully focus on the political part of your career?
Yeah, so I'd say 2010.
Okay.
So from 1995 to 2005, I was very active in my business. And in 2005 is when I started this nonprofit organization. And at that point, I pretty much transitioned out of my business, and my business partner really took it over. And we brought in another business partner, and they've done wonderful things since I moved on. And so I did nonprofit leadership for about 5 years,
Okay.
and then started focusing in on electoral politics.
So with everything that's happened, and we'll talk about maybe how the scope of your life has changed in the last year and a half, as it, has all of us. Are
Mhm.
there ever times, be honest, are there ever times where you look back and like, man, there are days I wish I could just go back to tilling or go back to, talking to local farmers and just get back into that food thing? Because it's been a wild ride the last year and a half. Do you ever have that moment where you're like, I kind of miss it?
Oh, I think everyone has moments like that. But to be honest with you, I love being Guelph's MPP.
Okay.
There have been some days at Queen's Park where partisan politics sort of take over, and that frustrates me. I think most people know me as somebody who tries to work across party lines. I'm obviously partisan. Like you can't sort of lead a political party and not be completely nonpartisan. But I'm the kind of person that really likes to work across party lines. I don't mind having disagreements on the issues, like I want climate action and somebody else may not, type of
Hmm.
thing. But what
Yep.
I find really frustrating some days at Queen's Park is when they're just bickering over little procedural things here or there that just seem to be people bickering just to bicker and just to argue for purely partisan purposes that really have little to do with a policy position, advancing what your constituents want, et cetera. And it's at moments like that where I think, why am I doing politics again? But for the most part, I love the job. I love all the people I get to meet. I love trying to make a difference in people's lives, and I have a number of heartwarming stories that I can tell you of things that I've been able to do to really help people and make a difference in their lives and make a difference here in Guelph.
It's funny because you were explaining just a moment ago, and I started having these like nightmarish flashbacks. You were talking about how there are times where people sit around and bicker just for the sake of bickering, and I feel like that's representative of my lovely wife and I upstairs when we've been sitting around at the same table for the last 18 months, and when there's not really a lot to discuss. It kind of seems like you're recanting my dinner last night. I hope she decides not to watch this program, or you might have to send out a missing persons for me.
Yeah,
But
yeah, we'll keep a lookout for you again.
yeah. I guess obviously a lot has changed in the landscape of your week to week. What is the one thing that stands out the most in terms of your life now versus your life, say 30 months ago? So pre-COVID, before it was even a whisper of a thing. Like, what is the biggest difference in your week to week now versus then?
Yeah, it is spending time with people. Like that is by far the biggest difference and the thing I miss the most. People have been quote pivot. The word pivot has become
I just want to bang my
overused
head
during
against the wall.
COVID.
I've heard it so much.
So the pivot online. hasn't been an easy one for me. Not in the sense like technology wise, it's been easy, and yeah, I've had an opportunity to meet with a lot of people, and especially at Queens Park, it's meant that people from across the province and people, let's say like in Northern Ontario, who would have a very challenging time getting to Queens Park, are able to connect more now via Zoom and other online tools. But none of that replaces that personal connection. And one of the reasons I got into politics and I love my job so much is that I have the true opportunity to connect with a lot of people and to listen to them, to learn from them, to help them, to act on their ideas or the issues they care about. And that personal connection I really miss. And I think that's a hard one for everyone. My mom, for example, lives in the US, and with the border closures and everything else, I haven't seen my mom since Christmas of 2019. I'm having to go
Oh my
back.
goodness.
So
Yeah.
well over a year and a half. And, I'm 51, and, the last 15, 18 months are the first time in my life that like 2020, for example, is the first time in my life that I went a year without spending time with my mom. And I think, those that's not easy, for any of us. Uh,
No, and you can try and accommodate. Like we have the same thing. My in-laws live in Brantford, so by no means the same thing. But they're like archaically old, and I can say that because I like to jab my wife. They're 83 and 87. My in-laws, but we got them an iPad, and I got to tell you, Mike, there's nothing more comical than watching someone in their 80s trying to sort out FaceTime. If your mom doesn't have one, I fully recommend you send one down there just because it's pure comedy. The amount of times we get but I'm hitting the button and it's not doing. I'm telling you, it is entertainment for hours.
yeah, we've definitely had some moments like that, and we've done some family Zoom for like holidays or my mom's birthday, things like that, and
Mhm.
trying to remind my mom the buttons she needs to push to unmute herself, what have you.
Get a
So hopefully
stylus because they,
she's
they
not
jam
going
the
there.
buttons.
So hopefully she's not listening.
I guess obviously just as a follow-up to kind of how things have changed, you mentioned there's a lot of stuff you miss. You're obviously you mentioned you're very actively involved in stuff in the community, especially over the weekends. Is there one kind of consistent pastime that you got to, indulge in as our political leader around the community? Like, is there an activity or something that you really looked forward to, maybe even specifically in the summer that you've been bummed that you haven't been able to take part in?
Yeah, I think two things for me. So one is I love the work that the Guelph Rotary Club does,
Mm-hmm.
and I especially enjoy the tree planting that happens every year around Earth Day. And 2 years in a row now, I haven't been able to do that with Rotary, and I really miss that. It's one of my favorite annual activities. And then another one for me is I'm a big believer in the work that Hope House does around just addressing poverty through building community. And I've spent a lot of time over the years volunteering at Hope House, serving breakfast, doing, this or that or whatever. And I haven't had the opportunity to do that. And so I miss those volunteer opportunities in the community, as well as the various events. I mean, one of the great things about being MPP, like I said, is I get invited to all the events in Guelph. And so some of them have pivoted online, which isn't the same, and some of them just haven't happened. And I really miss connecting with people in the community, my neighbors, my friends, at those kinds of events.
Nice. Sorry, I've been slightly distracted. My puppy. We got a dog over lockdown, and he has decided that he wants to come
Oh,
downstairs to the basement. So
great.
this was 100% not planned. I'm not sure if I'll keep this or just edit it out, but I'm not sure why he's down here at this point.
I think it's
Um,
perfect. One of the challenges I face is sometimes I'm on live TV doing interviews, and the dog will be at my feet, and I'm trying to do the interview, keep the dog off of
yeah.
CTV or whatever. And sometimes I'm texting my daughter, "Come down and get the dog. I'm on live TV." So
Yeah,
hopefully it's a
yeah.
little more casual with this interview.
Yeah, I saw him come down out of the corner of my eyes. I was like, oh boy, here we go. All right. So before we get into the meat of this, the super important stuff, which is really just around what you've been watching, I figured because you're my first politician that we should vote on a couple things.
Okay.
And I mean like some serious,
Okay.
serious stuff with massive implications. Are you ready? It's
I'm
kind of
ready.
an either or option. You ready? Number one, hamburger or hot dog?
Oh, a hamburger for sure.
Okay, fair enough. Yep, I would agree. Maybe I'll put some points up, like green check marks, so that we both agree on this. Number two, does pineapple belong on a pizza?
No, much to the displeasure of my children.
Perfect. Number three, Star Trek or Star Wars?
Ooh, man, all of the above. But if I had to choose one or the other, I'd go Star Wars.
Interesting. I'm actually very surprised at that answer. Star Trek was very much more of the politically driven
Well,
series.
I know, but I think I just the very first Star Wars was one of the first movies I ever saw where my parents took me to the movie theater, and I think I've just been a Star Wars fan ever since. That being said, I love Star Trek too, so it's a tough one.
I love that story. Everybody has that story of that movie. Way off topic. Mine is Jurassic Park.
Mm,
92, I was 12. It was like the world had changed. And I've heard that from a lot of people about, 1978's A New Hope Star Wars, right?
yep.
All right,
I would have
next.
been 9 at the time if you want to age me.
Up. All right, next. Vacations. All inclusive or like an a la carte, go find your own adventure?
A la carte. I'm a go paddle in the wilderness kind of vacationer.
Perfect. And this one, I'm not sure if it will apply. You mentioned that you have a daughter, so I'm not sure if there's anybody in the house that plays video games, but PlayStation or Xbox?
um, this is really going to date our family. So my kids are into we. So
Not even mad. Not even mad. That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for being a good sport on that one. Okay, so we've obviously been through 17,000 lockdowns, 17 red zones, whatever the last 18 months has looked at. What are the three things that you have been watching or are currently watching that's kind of, after the day's done, you've been sitting on Zoom calls all day in front of your perfect lit studio at home that you say is not perfectly lit. What are you sitting down to watch? And if you don't mind me asking, for each one, why? What is it about it?
okay. So you won't be surprised that a lot of it is political related. I
No.
can't get away from work. So one is Occupied. I don't know if you've seen Occupied, but
No.
it's basically like the Green leader becomes prime minister of Norway, and then Russia, and they're going to shut down their oil fields, and then Russia comes in and like occupies the country to keep the oil flowing to the EU. And somebody said you should watch it's a TV series, and somebody was like you should watch this, and so I started watching it, and I was just like, whoa, this is like really good on
That sounds
multiple
awesome,
levels.
actually.
And then I started imagining like, oh wow, what would happen if I became like premier of Ontario, and
Yep.
like somebody would occupy the country because I was too bruised. I don't know. So
All
anyway,
right. I like that.
yep.
Occupied. All right. What
Uh,
else?
Good. So another one I watched, I went through all of Babylon Berlin. I'm a big history buff, and just I really enjoyed the the almost psychological effects of people's experiences from being in World War One, how that affected like German society and culture, and just sort of the prelude to the rise of Hitler and Nazism, and I think somebody recommended it because we do have, and again this is political related. I mean, we've had a bit of a movement around the world in more sort of fascist oriented leaders being elected to high office. And somebody said, it's a good entertaining TV and detective series that kind of touches on some of those issues. And then movie related, over the holidays with my daughter, we actually went back and watched all the Star Wars movies from beginning to end. It started over the Christmas holidays. I think we finally finished maybe around Family Day because we got busy in January, February, and we had to finish things up. And then we were so inspired by that we repeated the exercise with the Lord of the Rings trilogy and the Hobbit movies. And so that's taken up a lot of time between, Christmas and, let's say, March break.
Yeah. So for Star Wars, did you watch them in release order or did you watch them chronologically? So you watched 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you incorporate Solo and Rogue One?
We did. I was going to say, we even incorporated Solo and Rogue One into the chronological order.
I can absolutely relate definitely to the Star Wars and specifically to the Lord of the Rings. So they went back and Peter Jackson, the director, remastered them all in 4K and released them around Christmas. But rather than just release them, he, like, if you remember, like the Hobbit was very color saturated, very oranges and greens and reds, whereas the Lord of the Rings had like this kind of cool blues and grays temperature.
Yep.
So he went back and when he redid them, he made them all consistent. So I went back and I watched all of the Hobbits on Christmas Eve and then did all of the Lord of the Rings on New Year's Eve because my lovely wife, who I've poked fun at a little bit on this, picked them up for me in 4K and we sat down here in the theater room and watched them. They are a rite of passage, both the Star Wars series and especially Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. I mean, they're a rite of passage for anyone, any child once they reach the appropriate age. I really think needs to sit down and go through these.
Yeah, and what was nice was my wife, so it was my teenage daughter, my wife and I did it together. And my wife was like, especially with Lord of the Rings, she's like, oh, I finally get it. She's like, over the years, we've watched one and then watched another one like later. And she's like, and normally I was exhausted from taking care of kids and everything else that I was kind of half watching, half sleeping. And she's like, oh, now I get it in a way I did it before.
That's awesome. Those are three awesome choices. And I love how diverse they are. That's cool. Yeah. It's like three very different things that's on the go. And the question, and the question I ask everyone is if you had someone watch something to help them better understand you as a person, what would you have them watch? A character from a movie, a specific movie, and why?
That is a tough one. So one answer I'll give you is just a character. So you're going to have to decide this because you're more of a movie buff than me. So I've been told throughout my life, and maybe that I look like Michael J. Fox. So I'm curious if you think that, or maybe a younger version of me did.
Yeah.
So if you want to know what I looked like when I was maybe 15 pounds lighter than I am right now, and a little bit younger,
you and I both.
Then a lot of people say that I look like Michael J. Fox. And then something that has made me cool with my kids is Paul Rudd and I lived together for a year in university. And
what?
Yes, we did. We both went to the University of Kansas, and we lived in the same house. And he used to run around all day long filming movies. Like, that was just his thing. And so I am in probably, I don't know, maybe 50 Paul Rudd home silly movies where he would say, I want you to say this, this, and this. And when I turn the camera on, and I would say it and he'd go, perfect. And then the next day he'd be like, I need you to say this when I turn the camera on. And so somewhere out there, if they haven't been taped over or lost, I'm in a whole bunch of home movies from Paul Rudd.
That literally not only makes you cool in your kids' books, you're officially cool in my books too. If it makes you feel any better at all, that is an amazing factoid. So, do you specifically watch Paul Rudd movies because of that? Like, do you feel like you should support the guy who kickstarted your home movie acting career all those years ago?
Yeah, yeah. Well, every time I see Paul Rudd in a movie, of course I think of the year we lived together,
Mhm.
and then it's funny because I was watching a Paul Rudd movie with my kids. I don't remember which one, and I just mentioned to my daughters, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I used to live with Paul Rudd," and they're like, "What? You've never told us that you lived with Paul Rudd?" So suddenly I've been cool. So we actually watched. If you want like a light, just funny, kind of silly, stupid movie, we watched Between Two Ferns the other night, and
So
which
good.
is brilliant, a brilliant movie, eh? And so Paul Rudd has a has a great interview with Paul Rudd in that film, and so that's the most recent Paul Rudd movie I watched.
The outtakes in that movie at the end
Yes.
are arguably some of the funniest things I have watched. I mean, we watched Between Two Ferns. Myself and I have like an unofficial like little brother, an unofficial kid. He's like 21 now, so he's not very little anymore. But myself, my wife, his mom, and him, we went to Jamaica a couple years ago before COVID hit, and we were watching Between Two Ferns on the plane. And I'll never forget being so embarrassed because at the end we watch the end credit scenes and we
Mhm.
were those two idiots on the plane crying. We were laughing so hard. And all these people are around, and all they want to do is be left alone. They're going on vacation, and we're dying in the seats. It is so inappropriately funny, and I would not have it any other way. Zach Galifianakis, he's one of those guys you either love his awkward, abrasive sense of humor, or you can't stand him at all.
Yeah, no, I thought it was very well done, and it was a good laugh on the weekend. And my
Nice.
daughter was the one who picked it out. I'm like, we try to watch a movie together maybe once every 2 weeks or so, and I
Mhm.
usually let her choose the movie, and that's the one she chose.
Have you watched? If you're open to suggestions of something a little different, if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, Greenland was launched a couple months ago with
Okay.
Gerard Butler. It's a natural disaster
Mhm.
movie, so a little bit different, but that's one of the best releases I've seen in a while. Very very cool story. Really really good cast of characters. That'd be a good thumbs
Okay.
up if you're open to suggestions.
I'm always open to suggestions, so I
Well,
will.
Mike,
I will.
I,
I will plant the seed of watching it with my daughter.
perfect. Well, Mike, I appreciate the time so much. I know obviously your life is extremely busy and the fact that you're able to make some time for me on a day where you're not running around at Queen's Park, I really can't thank you enough. I hope you'll stick around after I hit end of recording so we can chat for a few minutes longer.
Absolutely, it was a lot of fun, and hopefully you can give me a few more recommendations.
I anytime, my friend. Thanks again.